welcome Andrew and welcome everybody. This is the Intuitive Seeing Survival Sessions here in La Mission. We do this from 10 to 11. It'll be an hour long. We're going to go around here and share some of our experiences and viewpoints on the intuition and how to access it, how it can benefit you and improve your overall survival here and in the multi-dimensions of creation. So anyone who would like to start and share?
Thank you for that, Jeremy. I'm going to read something really fun over here. Hola, recording. So let me go into El Skypo. And this is going to be a writing by Duane Lee Hepner, or Duane the Great Writer. So, All Life is Simple by Duane is writing. Who is it that can see more than just creation? Each lifetime we come into somewhere in creation. We are indoctrinated according to whatever exists now. Of course, according to those who control others, you are not to know what all life actually is. You are only to know what you are told and what to do with yourself while you are here. There have been invented self-serving authorities for eons, as this is the reality of what is taking place in this created creation simulator. Rebazar and Duane New Ava are here to help unaware people wake up to something more real than can be considered with a person's mind-framed programming from invented controlling systems. Who can see this? It is a huge challenge and process to see more than self-agreeing restrictions from abusive authorities. The awesome potential of everyone is far more than what anyone can imagine. Creation is set up as a reference to experience until each person, for themselves, decides to wake up from the passing matrix dream of creation. All unaware, the old term being souls, are actually true beings of real light that have a greater potential than anything existing in creation. Creation is a cause and effect agitation that is needed for each of us to wake up to all life as it really is. Creation cannot be all life, as we have been told by those who control others. Rebazar and Duane Ava and the real universal guides are here to help wake up everyone from the implosion of this creation bubble. The world-controlling systems of politics, religion, spiritual, education, science, technology, and business have been invented to control everyone on this human farming planet. Contact Duane Hepner on Skype and join Intuitive Seeing Survival Sessions and learn to see for yourself what is really taking place in this creation simulator that you do not know. Sing, "New you, and see all."
Thank you, Kelsey.
Thank you.
Maybe we can try this new "You" song for everybody, just so they get an idea how you can do it by yourself, preferably before bed, so your dreams may open up for you, your experiences on the real side may open up. But it goes like this: New you, you. And you can do this for 5-10 minutes, or however long it feels right. Before bed or even during the day, it's a way to connect to your intuition and other realms and dimensions and planes and fun stuff. Now, one thing I wanted to share about intuition, a couple things actually that are interesting, is that one thing, it comes out of nowhere, so to speak, your intuition. Whereas the teachings, the religious, spiritual teachings, they're in a book, they're in the sacred works. Somebody's telling you something, giving you, lecture. It's something you know already, something that's visible and literal. But your intuition actually, it seems to come out of nowhere, just like pop. Oh, yeah. It's like, where does this come from? Well, that's in a way, more real than something you read in a book, because it's now, which is the other thing I wanted to focus on. It's actually now. Your intuition comes out of a nowness or isness that can be used right away. It doesn't have to be memorized, or like you don't have to study it. I mean, you can, but it's something that's like present right now at the moment, that's for your survival now. It can be used. So those two things, intuition, it's like comes out of nowhere, but it's real and it's now. So it's something practical in a way, and it might be something that you're not used to using or to accessing, because we're so used to the literal, again, spiritual ideas, religious ideas, things like that, we've been indoctrinated with through lifetimes. The intuition, it's always here, it's always now. So our task is to, access this intuition. How are we going to access it? One way is through the new you. So through that, you'll find a way to get through your literal mind, which is useful, but also a hindrance at times, a lot of times. So intuition, very important in our lives. To Kevin? Kevin has something to share? Sure.
Well, I wanted to touch on something that Kelsey read in the Dwayne's article in regards to the inability to recall all information and references from past lifetimes, because it's actually quite interesting how it works, because most beings and body types, in actuality, as it would seem, actually do retain all their references and experiences and can access them, even if they are locked into their personal self and their emotions and their mental bodies. Because what seems to be the case is that, as we all are probably aware of, this is a dark force, unaware, reptilian-controlled matrix, and one of the mechanisms by which they maintain this control is to perpetuate ignorance in their slave species, which would include the human race. And they have a mechanism by which they have installed, almost as though, a program in the human consciousness, which makes it so every time a human is reincarnated back, that's presumably if they do come back as another human, they then have a consciousness affected body form with this little dark force installed gift into their consciousness, which makes it so they are unable to access their past lifetimes. Because as you can imagine, if you can readily recall and access all your past lifetimes, you are in a far more advantageous position in regards to going through the creational process, because every lifetime around, you've effectively you're not starting over per se, but if you have set a certain intent and are affecting for yourself circumstances and situations that express from it, you then have to, as though, pick up from where you left off. And Dwayne himself, when he said he had a previous lifetime as Goldie the Indian, and he was very much working with the guides and being apprised of all the real references and etc. pertaining to the true reality. And obviously that intent and that focus was maintained. Nevertheless, he would come back in another human incarnation, as he is currently as Dwayne the Great Writer. And but nevertheless, despite the focus and intent maintained through his awareness, when he assumed a new body vehicle, all information pertaining to that was no longer readily available, and so once again he had to be, as though his personal self had to be brought up to speed and brought back into the picture and reintroduced to all the references and the guides were featuring in his real side experiences. And of course, if you are a unaware dark force controller type individual and you can access all these past lifetimes, you are in a much more favourable position, because you then don't have to be reacquainted with all the information. You can simply carry on from where you left off. So this is one of the mechanisms by which they maintain their slave species. But with the intuition, or the real awareness, the greater facility of ourselves and our real true beingness, from that oversight, because that is part of this real everything isness that animates through all consciousness, even though from the personal self and very limited perspective we may not be able to access these past lifetimes, because every lifetime around we have a new body, we have a new memory vehicle, and all previous lifetimes of experiences are filed in the subconscious, but through the intuitive real awareness aspect of ourselves, so we can access all these past lifetimes and references, and so this is then a far greater tool for survival. For indeed, on the real side, have I been shown a number of past lifetimes that I wouldn't be able to access just being, if I was just a personal self-immersed individual and my focus was entirely retained with my emotional and mental vehicles, which is the case with most individuals in creation. But through the singing of the New You song before going to sleep, so you are taken through the process of awareness, and this does incorporate being shown these past lifetimes. Not necessarily that you need to know them, because although these are references, they really only serve as further comparisons to recognise the is by. And what can happen is a lot of individuals can get a bit absorbed and over enthralled with their past lifetimes, and they can lock onto them and become emotionally attached with the notions of what they were in previous lifetimes as readily as any other idea. But what I tend to find is, as the process of awareness does involve a facing of the consciousness we have constructed and the releasing of its construct, that inadvertently all the agreements we have made in past lifetimes we will find that as we do face and release them, we will see much by way of the simulation and the lifetimes that were in association with the agreements at the moment they were forged. And so it's not really a case we're being shown past lifetimes just for the sake of it. It just seems to be an inadvertent part of the process. And as I was saying, with the humans and the various slave species, as they have this little almost like amnesia type of block which makes them unable to access what would be the subconscious parts of themselves and therefore the past lifetime informations it contains. So what tends to happen is that part of it really is not even necessarily that the controllers may be installing such a program into their consciousness, but because humanity and the slaves have been indoctrinated to be very literal and locked in their own mind and mind frames, they are more or less limiting themselves effectively, that they can't access the intuitive parts and the greater awareness that they are. Because there was a real side experience I shared only a couple of days ago where it rather reiterated this situation, for I saw a group of humans and they were locked into a kind of controller orchestrated trap, if you will, but nevertheless it was an example of how reincarnation is anyway, in which they were constantly alternating between two positions. In one moment, which only spanned a couple of months, they would be as a group of villagers, and then all of a sudden the scene would switch and they would suddenly be in a more early 1900s era, and they'd be alternating between the two. But every time they moved from one position to the next, they had no conscious memory of the position they had been in before, and so perpetually they were stuck in this loop of which there was seemingly no escape. But it wasn't even a case that they were aware they were trapped in this situation, because, as I said, they had no ability to access any information regarding the situation they were in, because they were consciousness, personal self immersed, and therefore more locked in and operating from their mind and emotional vehicles. And so it was a case that me and another individual would be inserted into this situation, and we were able to eventually draw the attention and glean the attention of these individuals, and we were able to set them free, because they were actually being controlled in this situation by a group of winged demonic type characters who were just other expressions of the dark forces. But that was just an example of how the process actually is, how we go from lifetime to lifetime, and we have no recollection of the previous lifetimes. And even when an individual transitions, when the typical human body form expires, they will instantly be in the next position, and the position they will be in will generally be the astral, because most humans will be physical, astral, focused and based, and so it's simply a position they have effected and afforded for themselves. But Dwayne has shared, I think either in a previous experience that he shared, or in one of his new books, how he saw that as all the humans transition and are on the astral, they have no idea where they are, where they're going, what to do, and they just seem to drift around aimlessly like zombie-like drones. And then he said how they then get filed into this certain area. It's almost like a body selection process, and I think he described it as they were trundling along in a sort of like a train type situation, and then they would select their bodies. These are the body forms they had in fact effected for themselves based on what they had decided, and then they would return back to the physical level. And throughout the entire process of them being on the physical, transitioning, being on the astral and returning to the physical, they're almost like completely oblivious, like in wandering around in almost like aimless stupors, as though, glassy-eyed. And I've seen saw the same thing myself with the experience I just shared. These individuals were fading and transitioning from one set of circumstances to the next. But there was like a part in between where they would all assume seats, and all these seats would have their names and a picture of the body form they were to assume, but they were almost on unconscious automatic pilot as they would shuffle into this room and take their seats and then become this next position. And I saw another real-side experience where there was an individual, a human, who transitioned. He dropped his physical body and found himself on the astral, and due to his focus and his attention and where his intent lay and his emotional attachments, he and other humans who had similar emotional attachments and agreements, and so they formed a somewhat of what is referenced as a soul group, for want of a better term. They were going through a similar body form selection process, and as I observed this, they were completely oblivious of their surroundings and what was going on. Because what tends to happen is, although their personal self is dictating their future lifetime positions and body forms, it's actually the real awareness that is orchestrating the whole situation, and the real awareness formulates their next body form based on what the personal self has made available to it. I think Dwayne described it as a block of clay, and according to how the personal self is and its consciousness dictates the quality and the amount of clay you have to play with, and then the real awareness sort of formulates it and then positions its created personal self accordingly. And these individuals were doing the same. They were shuffling through this, it almost looked like a mechanical type section, and it was being overseen by all these unaware reptilian controller characters. But again, these humans were completely oblivious of them. And I've heard individuals speak of this before, that when they've had regression hypnosis, they've actually said that when they transitioned, they were expecting to see certain things, like they were expecting to see gods or heavens, but what they actually saw were sort of reptilian and grey aliens, as though processing them through a sort of situation and more or less orchestrating the whole reincarnational situation. I mean, in actuality, the controllers can do nothing to us unless we have agreements extended to them that we can, but nevertheless, they are there, but the vast majority of humans won't be aware that they are. And indeed, when most humans transition and they go to these designated heavens of man, the actual individuals that lord over these life-level positions are actually highly placed reptilians. The Kalom god as a main example, but he will masquerade in such a way just to maintain people's notions and ideas of of their religious agreements and attachments they have immersed themselves within. And so, as I said, I saw these humans going through this mechanical gauntlet, as it were, almost as they went, their human body forms would slowly begin to fall away, and they became as the body forms they were then to assume. And interestingly, they were actually, through their emotional attachments and agreements and intent, they had actually projected for themselves a future lifetime as a group on an entirely different planet. And the body forms prevalent there were more like walking two-legged wolf and cat people, and so whatever their emotional attachments, wherever their focus and attention and intent had been that had formulated that for them, that was nevertheless their situation. And it's very possible they may have been even, and very likely even, unconscious of how their focus and attention and intent formulation was actually projecting themselves as such a future situation and body form. And then they would all shuffle aimlessly and drone-like. Eventually, towards the end of this sort of mechanical processing gauntlet type affair, they would then assume completely the forms they were to become, and then right at the end would be a portal, and they'd all be jumping through it. And so what was happening, I was basically shown this entire process of them being on the astral, assuming their body forms, like a body form selection process, and then going through the portal where they would be reborn on the planet where they would assume such forms. And once again, as I said in the beginning, as they assume these body forms, they would have no conscious recollection of any of the previous lifetimes they had as a human. And so, of course, unless they access their intuitive self and therefore then those references would become accessible. But yeah, I'll just add that. I think I was trying to make a point. I'm not sure what it was, but that sounded okay to me.
That was
Yeah, that was going to turn our attention to the comment on the screen here.
Some groups and some of our messenger groups. Yeah, I shared a bunch of galactic groups and what's the other ones? Like starseed groups.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew, for your comment. Yes, instead of love, we like to try to promote awareness, and see awareness comes from a lot of things, including the intuition, but awareness is through all the bodies. Awareness animates ourselves and the bodies. Andrew, did you have any dream visions to share? Any dreams you'd like us to go over?
What did he say?
What does he say?
He says, "Howdy, y'all. I'm not a huge Beatles fan by any means, but they were right about one thing. All you need is love. Love is the way, the truth, and the light for all."
Yeah, nothing's negated. Everything you can love, you can hate, whatever, You can love, you can hate. Nothing's negated. That's the cool thing about awareness and just being and seeing is there's nothing negated. You don't have to be a hater. It's
You ain't gotta be a hater.
No, it's just whatever it is, and you decide what you want to do. So if you want to love, There's freedom with that. There's usually religions and spiritual paths have guidelines and restrictions. Basically restrictions, You're to do this if you want to get to here, get to this happy place, or to be free or whatever. There's usually some kind of order in that you have to follow. But really, there's no order in life. Just be and see, and use your intuition, and you can have whatever you want. That's another cool thing. You can have whatever you want. If you want love, you got it. There's a way for you to find that. You got to figure that out for yourself. Or you can go to the religious, spiritual people and they'll tell you how to do it. But usually that's, again, somebody else involved in your life, whereas you can do it yourself with guidance and be okay with everything. I think Jeremy needs to talk now.
I need to, yes.
Yes.
Well, not sure if Andrew has something to share, but in the meanwhile, I would like to go over an experience that I had, which I had shared previously on a Skype, maybe just a couple days ago now. The experience itself was rather straightforward. I was standing in a hallway, very similar to the scene in The Matrix at the end of the first one, I believe, where he's standing in the hallway and he sees a lot of the geometric coding, or a lot of the binary codes in the walls, and he sees the Agent Smiths come around the corner and he sees them as coding as well. And in this scene, they're shooting bullets at Neo, and he catches the bullets with his hand. Now, in this experience, I was doing something very similar. There was maybe 3 or 4 individuals in front of myself, all of which were shooting bullets at me, but I had my hand out and I was catching them. And as I was catching these bullets, there was bullets coming in from the right-hand side, my left-hand side, and so I had to be very aware and very now. And see, this was the big hint with this experience, is that from this now position of awareness to where we just are indifference and very detached and indifference to the creations of others and their decisions and just anything, really to creation itself, being very, very indifferent. This is the bullet idea. These are the attitudes, the creations of others. You know, you might say something like, that's the hate that others generate, even the love ideas. You know, it's just the bullets are just the ideas that others send out. And whether they impact us or we catch them or they affect us is a decision. So again, just like that indifference position is a decision. And really, when we position ourselves in such a way to where we're being objective to everything, to where we're trying to see something else, that sets us up to tune into our intuition, because we're getting outside of our literal mind that's very conditioned with all the thoughts that we create about something. With any situation that comes up, we have these predisposed arsenal of things that we can label, you know, especially with the eyes when we see something. You know, this is why sometimes in our real sight experiences or our dream visions, when we see certain things, it's hard for us to kind of get the idea, right? You know, a lot of the times people say about dreams, it's like, oh, that's your past life. This is karma situations. This is this and that. And you can know a lot of psychic and seers, you know, they only see so far. And so ourselves trying to see something else is a huge challenge. And it really, you know, that indifference plays a big part. And so this was the big hint with this experience. There is something else I would like to touch on, something small, and that is the idea of intuition, all its own. That even intuition, when we say intuition, within our minds, we have a connotation, right? We hear the word intuition and we automatically think that we know what it is, or we think we understand where it comes from. Like people say, oh, that's like your gut feeling. See, they relate it to the body because this is all that they see. Right, and so that mind starts, you know, you start to relate to this mind, actually takes you out of this intuitive position. That's the dinner bell. Lost my train of thought. The alarm.
Takes you out of your...
You see intuition.
Yeah, so, yeah, when we hear the word intuition, again, we go back to our mind, the gut feelings, and so on with these things. But it really isn't that. And actually, you can see it, where it comes from, this intuition. It is a more unseen part, though, because, again, a lot of people don't pay attention to that. They're astral mental only, just by the way that they were literalized, educated by the system for years, all through the childhood. You know, most children are put into preschool, kindergarten, and so on, and, you know, all the way through college. And this is all a part of a big indoctrination. And so with that, you know, it takes a lot for a person to be indifferent, to set themselves up to see from a more intuitive position, to where you're just, it's really like a recognition of what's already taking place, because what you're seeing is like a big hint, you know, it's like life is always on. It's constantly showing you something else, but it's up to the individual having the experience to pay attention. And again, to finish my thought with the intuition, there's an interesting sort of nuance with the word intuition. A lot of more native peoples would use the phrase, you need to look into it. And this is where the word intuition came from, intuit. Basically, again, saying you need to look into it. And so a lot of people get confused with that it idea. Well, what is it? What do you mean look into it? But see, the it is just that. It's right there, the hint, even with the word it, because you asked the question, what is that? It's the unknown. And so this is really what we're trying to present, letting people know that it is an unseen part and it is an unknown aspect, but it's not out of your reach or it's not some mystified thing. It's one of the bodies that we animate, the intuitive etheric body. So that was my little piece.
Thank you everybody for coming. See us next time.
Yeah, see you next week. We're going to do the new you, so again, you get a flavor of what to do before bed.
And we don't currently care about copyrights. You can download this video and upload it to your Facebook or YouTube. Thanks. Intuitive Seeing Survival Sessions at Puerte Valle Community Room in La Mission to get in touch with your intuition. The so-called mysteries of a person's dreams have always intrigued many who are unaware of what is actually taking place while a person's physical body is sleeping. The dream idea was invented, just like conspiracy theory, by those who control others, as a means to keep unaware people and other body types away from knowing their so-called dreams actually refer to another dimension, a portal, an opening, to start to wake up to more than just struggling and suffering as slaves in creation. If you want to access your intuitive ability, then participate in our monthly event at Puerte Valle Community Room in La Mission. Contact Val Vitols at 408-990-6627. 408-990-6627.